Welcome to Homeless in America TV, the channel dedicated to telling the stories of those often forgotten on the streets of our cities. In today's video, we take you deep into the heart of Kensington, Philadelphia, a neighborhood where poverty, addiction, and resilience collide. You'll witness the human faces behind the statistics, the mothers, veterans, and young people struggling to survive amid makeshift tents, abandoned homes, and the shadow of fentanyl. Through this homeless documentary, we explore not just the hardships, but also the small acts of hope and kindness that persist even in the darkest corners. From community revival efforts to personal stories of courage, this video sheds light on the reality of homelessness in America and challenges us all to see, listen, and act. On Kensington Avenue, time feels suspended, as if the city itself has held its breath. The winter wind slices through tattered tarps and makeshift shelters, rattling the frayed edges like mournful whispers, while the people beneath curl up into themselves, shadows hunched against the biting cold, their bodies trembling with exhaustion and frost. The air is thick with the pungent scent of mildew, decaying trash, and discarded needles, mingling with the distant hum of traffic, a constant reminder that life goes on just beyond these forgotten streets. Every footstep reverberates against boarded-up windows and walls smeared with graffiti, echoing the silent truth that here, lives are neglected, erased, and too often invisible to the world outside. Kensington was once the throbbing industrial heart of Philadelphia, alive with the rhythmic clatter of looms, the pounding of steel hammers, and the laughter of children spilling into streets teeming with energy and commerce. Now, it stands as a ghost of its former glory, a shadowed no-go zone where the city's failures are laid bare. Makeshift tents line the cracked sidewalks, abandoned homes loom like silent sentinels, and those who dwell here move like ghosts, largely unseen by the bustling world just blocks away. This story is not merely about drugs or poverty. It is about humanity, about compassion, about loss, and about the stubborn flicker of hope that refuses to be extinguished. In this pervasive darkness, one question hangs heavy in the winter air. What makes a city allow its own people to die slowly in the shadows? This is a homeless documentary, a testament to lives overlooked, a mirror reflecting the conscience of a nation, and a heartfelt plea to bear witness to the reality that society so often chooses to ignore. The nightmare of fentanyl and trank. As the first pale light of sunrise stretches across Kensington, the streets do not stir with the promise of work, hope, or opportunity. They awaken with desperation. Fentanyl, the insidious white ghost, has infiltrated every alley, every cracked sidewalk, every ragged doorway, and every breath drawn by those who call these streets home. A single grain, no larger than a speck of salt, can end a life in an instant. But when it is laced with xylazine, known on the streets as trank, the effects are cruelly drawn out. The body becomes paralyzed, the skin decays, and death creeps forward slowly, silently, inexorably. The scene is almost surreal in its horror. Figures stand motionless on corners and pavements, heads bowed as though they are already halfway gone, trapped between the living and the dead. Ambulances scream through the streets with alarming frequency, their sirens cutting through the cold morning air, yet too many of these calls end in tragedy. For some, no hand, no medicine, no rush of aid can turn back the inevitable. Fentanyl is far more than a public health crisis. It is a reflection of systemic neglect. Addiction does not begin with desire, it begins with despair, with a society that has overlooked its most vulnerable. In Kensington, every overdose tells a story. A young man collapsing onto the icy pavement, a mother losing her child to the indifferent street, a veteran writhing in the shadow of memories that refuse to fade. Each life lost carves an emptiness into the fabric of the community, a stark reminder that the suffering here is not random, it is built into the system that surrounds them. This harrowing reality is captured in every frame of a homeless documentary, the silent suffering, the relentless cycles of addiction, and the quiet dignity of those who endure even as devastation surrounds them. It is a story of despair, yes, but also of the stubborn humanity that flickers in the darkness, waiting to be seen, acknowledged, and understood. Homelessness, more than just shelter. Homelessness is far more than the absence of a roof overhead. It is the quiet erosion of community, the stripping away of identity, and the slow corrosion of self-worth. Each tarp draped over a corner, every tent pitched on a cracked sidewalk, each cardboard box serving as a bed tells a story. A mother evicted after a domestic dispute shivers beneath a thin blanket, clinging to the hope of keeping her children safe. A veteran battles the invisible wounds of PTSD, flinching at every siren that echoes through the streets. A young adult, abandoned by opportunity and cast aside by society, drifts through days defined only by survival. Every individual is a living testament to systemic failure. Yet, the world beyond Kensington often sees only numbers, statistics, and inconvenience. In Philadelphia, roughly 5,000 residents are homeless, and Kensington alone houses 15–20% of this population. Over 70% of these men and women struggle with mental illness or addiction, conditions often compounded by neglect and poverty. The consequences spread like ripples. Crime increases, sanitation declines, disease spreads, and a pervasive indifference from the rest of the city settles over these neighborhoods like a second winter. When compassion dries up, society loses not just its empathy, but its soul. The homeless are not merely victims of circumstance. They are mirrors reflecting the inequality, the neglect, and the structural failures that shape their lives. A homeless documentary brings this hidden reality into focus, capturing both suffering and resilience. It shows people enduring, surviving, and, against immense odds, sometimes finding the strength to reclaim fragments of their dignity. It is in these stories, the laughter shared over a makeshift meal, the small victories against despair, that the true human spirit persists, quietly insisting on being seen, remembered, and valued. The roots of the crisis, Kensington was not always a landscape of despair. Once, it thrived as a bustling industrial hub, earning the nickname the Manchester of America. In Dual, textile mills hummed with activity, machinery shops clanged with precision, and steel factories roared with productivity. Families built their lives around stable employment, sturdy homes, and tight-knit communities. Children grew up with a sense of security, routines that anchored their days, and a faint but unwavering hope for the future. The streets resonated with life, the chatter of neighbors, the laughter of children, and the steady rhythm of work that promised stability for generations. But the 1,970 seconds brought an upheaval that would change the city forever. Deindustrialization swept through Kensington like a relentless tide. Factories shuttered, unemployment skyrocketed, and once thriving neighborhoods fell into decay. Redlining and discriminatory housing policies forced low-income families into concentrated pockets of poverty, cutting them off from opportunity and isolating communities that had once been vibrant. The structures, both literal and social, that had supported life here collapsed, leaving residents trapped in cycles of deprivation with few avenues for escape. Today, the reality is stark. Median incomes hover around $25,000 per year, barely half the national average, while 60% of residents spend more than half of their earnings just to keep a roof over their heads. Social welfare programs move at a glacial pace, affordable housing remains scarce, and medical costs are crushing. Poverty in Kensington is not random or incidental. It is woven into the very fabric of a system that was supposed to protect its people, yet too often fails them. A homeless documentary reveals these layers, exposing the historical and structural forces that shape the crisis. It reminds viewers that the suffering on Kensington streets is not simply a matter of personal failure. It is the outcome of decades of neglect, policy decisions, and systemic inequities that continue to define the lives of those trapped in this cycle. Voices from the ground. Amid the tattered tarps and boarded-up doors, faint voices rise, cutting through the cold silence of Kensington streets. Thomas has been living on the pavement for 2 years, a casualty of lost work and a marriage that could not withstand life's relentless pressures. Jasmine, a single mother, found herself spiraling into opioid addiction after a workplace injury left her body in pain and her mind in despair. Eddie, a veteran, flinches at every passing siren, each wail dragging him back into memories of war that refuse to loosen their grip. Yet even in the shadow of despair, glimmers of hope persist. Wellness courts, programs designed to replace incarceration with treatment, offer a lifeline to some. a chance to rebuild when society has long abandoned them. Thomas, voice weary but resolute, sums up their desire. We don't want charity. We just need a chance to start over. Every conversation here is a lifeline. Every recognition of humanity, every listening ear, can save a life. These personal stories form the beating heart of a homeless documentary, giving voice to those often rendered invisible, and reminding the world that dignity and resilience endure, even in the darkest corners of the city. In Kensington, survival is not just about food or shelter. It is about being seen, being heard, and being remembered as human. Life in the shadows. Life in Kensington unfolds in the harshest of shadows. Makeshift tents, abandoned homes, vacant lots, and narrow spaces beneath bridges become fragile sanctuaries for those without a place to call their own. The water runs murky and contaminated. Rodents scuttle through corners unchecked, and infections spread with frightening ease. Skin diseases, untreated wounds, and even minor injuries can quickly turn life-threatening. A stark reminder of how precarious existence can be on these streets. Yet, even in this relentless chaos, small sparks of humanity shine through. Organizations such as Project Home, Prevention Point, and Kensington Storefront provide much-needed lifelines, distributing food, Narcan to reverse overdoses, and basic medical care to those too often ignored by the system. Volunteers brave the freezing nights, trudging through snowstorms to deliver meals, blankets, and hope. Among the residents themselves, quiet acts of resilience persist. Some grow tiny gardens in abandoned lots, painting murals that brighten the grey streets, or painstakingly clearing trash from the area they call home. These gestures may seem small, but they are profound acts of dignity and resistance against despair. Even in the darkest shadows, kindness persists. A shared meal, a cleaned-up corner, a smile exchanged amidst hardship. These are the threads of connection that hold the community together. A homeless documentary captures these moments, reminding viewers that resilience exists alongside suffering, and that even in the most broken places, humanity refuses to be extinguished. Impact on the community and city. The crisis in Kensington does not exist in isolation. It touches everyone, reshaping the very fabric of the community. Local businesses shutter their doors, unable to weather the economic strain, and tax revenue declines, leaving fewer resources to support those in need. Abandoned homes multiply like silent witnesses to neglect, their broken windows and empty frames reflecting a neighborhood in slow decay. Long-term residents find themselves living side by side with addiction, pollution, and the constant uncertainty of street life. Their sense of safety eroded day by day. Children attend school, but the lessons learned within classroom walls cannot erase the instability waiting for them outside. Many return to overcrowded shelters, precarious living situations, or the cold streets, where survival often takes precedence over education. Some schools step in with psychological support programs and free breakfast initiatives, offering fragile lifelines to students struggling to navigate the chaos of their daily lives. Kensington's struggle is a stark reminder that homelessness is not merely an individual problem. It ripples outward, affecting the economy, public safety, and the cohesion of entire communities. Every boarded-up house, every empty storefront, every child without a stable home echoes the deep interconnection between people and the city around them. A homeless documentary captures these layers with nuance, showing that behind the statistics are lives bound together, each affecting and being affected by the other in a web of human reality. Efforts at revival. Amid the shadows of Kensington, glimmers of hope have begun to emerge. The Kensington Community Revival Plan has dedicated $15 million to breathe life back into the neighborhood, funding home renovations, establishing health centers, and deploying mobile units to reach those in crisis before addiction claims another life. Street outreach teams walk the streets day and night, offering a lifeline to people teetering on the edge, reminding them that someone sees them, that someone cares. Faith-based organizations, such as the Lovelot Church, step into the gap where systems fall short. They organize prayer services, distribute clothing, and provide recovery support, creating safe spaces where compassion and humanity are tangible. Local residents, refusing to surrender their streets to neglect, have formed groups like clean Kensington, sweeping sidewalks, removing trash, and painting murals that reclaim the spirit and color of their neighborhoods. These acts, though small in scale, carry enormous symbolic weight, a declaration that the community will not be erased. The results, while modest, are tangible. Some streets hum again with life. Overdose deaths from fentanyl have declined slightly, and trust between residents is slowly being rebuilt. These efforts are not a cure-all, but they are sparks of resilience in a long and difficult struggle. A homeless documentary captures these moments, showing that even in the most broken places, hope can take root, and that transformation, no matter how incremental, begins with action, care, and the unwavering belief that change is possible. Reflections of the narrator. After years of walking the streets, filming, and documenting the lives of Kensington's most vulnerable, one truth has become impossible to ignore. Hope persists, fragile though it may be. Amid the trauma, neglect, and relentless hardships, the people of Kensington still find ways to help one another survive. They offer shared meals, a comforting word, or simply a presence that says, "You are not invisible." Their actions remind us that no one is born to live on the streets, and that the true measure of a city lies in how it treats its most vulnerable citizens. Beneath the bleak grey skyline, the first rays of dawn filter through tattered tents and makeshift shelters. The light is uneven, fragile, yet undeniable, a quiet testament that even battered faith in humanity can endure. In those small, shimmering moments, resilience and dignity pierce through despair, hinting at the possibility of renewal and connection. A homeless documentary is far more than mere observation. It is a call to bear witness, to feel empathy, and to act. It demands that viewers confront the human faces behind the statistics, recognize the shared responsibility to care for one another, and understand that change begins not with policies alone, but with the courage to see, listen, and respond. Conclusion: homeless in America. Kensington stands as a stark microcosm of America's homelessness crisis, a place where wealth and poverty collide in jarring contrast. Here, gleaming high-rises and abandoned homes exist side by side, exposing the deep social contradictions that define a nation. The streets whisper truths that statistics alone cannot convey: inequality, neglect, and the human cost of indifference. Homeless in America is not just a phrase, it is a warning, a call to recognize that compassion is finite, and when it fades, so too does the soul of society. It challenges us to confront the reality that the suffering we see on these streets is not distant or abstract. It is a mirror reflecting the values, priorities, and conscience of a country that often looks away. To those who bear witness, the message is clear: look, listen, and act. Change does not begin solely with government policy or social programs. It begins with each individual willing to care, to extend a hand, and to recognize the humanity in another person. Every small act of empathy, every moment of acknowledgement, holds the power to save a life, to restore dignity, and to rebuild hope. This homeless documentary stands as testimony, as plea, and as mirror, a reflection not only of the struggles and resilience of Kensington's residents, but of who we are as a society, and who we might become if empathy, understanding, and action prevail. It reminds us that every story matters, every life counts, and every effort, no matter how small, can contribute to a world where no one is left to survive alone on the streets.